Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 8, Episode 20, The Millennium. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I am doing pretty well, considering I am now the mother of a high school student. My daughter had her first day of high school today. She's actually still there while I'm recording this. And she's, there she went. Dropped her off this morning and off she went, just walking into high school. How dare she? No, I'm really excited for her. She already sent me a text at lunchtime that she's having a great day, which is pretty much all you want as a mother. So I'm excited to pick her up here in a couple hours and hear about her day. I loved high school. I know that feels like people don't say that enough. It's not like it was the best time of my life, but I remember being so ready for it, ready for all of the, just, I guess, things that go along with it. More responsibility, more, even just like more work. I wanted to be busier. I remember that very vividly. I wanted to have more responsibility. I wanted to be involved in school. I was one of those kids, and I see that in her. So I'm really excited because she needs to come out of her shell a little bit, and I'm confident she will be able to do that at high school. So I'm excited. In other news, I received word yesterday that I booked a job for a furniture place. It's a commercial. And guess what? It's an ergonomic store. Yeah, ergonomic furniture. It's not called Back in Business or Good Vertebrations. It's actually called Branch. Not sure how that applies to ergonomic furniture, but anyway, I'm excited. I'm excited that I book any job, honestly. And I just thought it was very relevant to include in my banter section of the pod because it obviously relates to Elaine. Speaking of, let's just get into this episode. The synopsis for The Millennium is as follows. Kramer and Newman squabble after scheduling their Millennium parties on the same night. Jerry claims the number one spot on his girlfriend's speed dial, causing a fight between her and her stepmother. Elaine's problems with a clothing store owner lead her to shop at another store, unaware it's owned by the same woman, while George works hard to get fired so he can accept a lucrative offer with the Mets. This episode was written by Jennifer Crittenden. Yay, female writer. All right, we start out in a shop. Elaine is trying to get the attention of the woman behind the counter. She's on the phone, totally ignoring Elaine, even waves her off with her hand when Elaine tells her, I have a question about these hirachis. She's talking on the phone with someone about strong margaritas and just nothing pressing. It's very apparent. Elaine wants to buy the hirachis, and finally she gets fed up and just says, hey! The woman finally hangs up and she says, yes, what can I do for you? Elaine drops the shoes. Nothing. You just lost a customer. The woman really could care less. Elaine tries to storm off, but then pushes the door instead of pulls it, which isn't the best look. Not too cool. The actress in this scene is Victoria Mahoney. She plays the rude woman we find out is Gladys Mayo. Other than Seinfeld, she's also appeared in shows like Brewster Place, Red Shoe Diaries, and a film called Back in Business. It all comes back to these ergonomic stores. I don't think it was about ergonomic furniture, but I just thought it was relevant to bring up. Looks like Victoria switched to directing soon after this appearance. She has directed over 25 projects, including The Morning Show, You, and Night Sky. I think she's great as Gladys Mayo. She really pisses me off just as much as she pisses off Elaine. Just such infuriating aloofness. It's very well done. My take on the scene, it's a fun scene. We had an opening with Elaine. That's what I love. And it's always a great choice. So relatable here. I think we've all been ignored by salespeople, and I like that part of it. This is a bit extreme with her waving her off, I think. I don't know if someone would actually do that, but that's what causes Elaine to go from 0 to 100. And once again, I don't blame her. Waving your hand at Elaine Bennis? Hell no, lady. That's not going to happen. If this was current times, the Yelp site for Putumayo would be blowing up. And then the pushing instead of pulling the door. Why is that so embarrassing? It is so embarrassing every time. And for Elaine, that was just the worst time for that to happen. All right, next we're in an apartment. It's Jerry's girlfriend's place. She says, we should get going. We don't want to miss the previews. And Jerry says, oh, I love the previews. And that recently he was at the movies and he said, must miss after a preview. And she's like, I think I was there. That was really funny. Yeah, I got a good laugh, Jerry says. And then Jerry wants to check his messages before they go because, well, it's the 90s and people do this constantly in TV shows. Oh, I got to go check my messages. He picks up the receiver and takes a closer look at her phone, and we see a close-up of the speed dial grid, and we see Jerry is 7, and he's quite impressed. So the actress here who plays Jerry's girlfriend, Valerie, her name is Lauren Graham. She might look familiar to you guys. She's appeared in Loving, Caroline in the City, Law and Order. Ba 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 ba. Boom ba dum boom 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 boom. Okay, we have the ultimate Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection. For those of you not familiar, Lauren Graham plays the star of Gilmore Girls, Lorelai Gilmore. She is one of my all-time favorite actresses. I think she is fabulous as Valerie. You know, she gets really subtle comedy, but there's a lot of substance, and she gets to show some range during this performance. I just love Lauren Graham. She's a master at everything from comedy to drama, kind of like a tall JLD, if you will. All right, next we are in Jerry's apartment. George is impressed that he's on the speed dial after 2 dates. What number? 7? You know, that's a pain to change. You have to lift the little plastic thing up with a pen. That is so relatable. I totally remember. We had a phone exactly like this growing up. They did provide these little like kind of cutouts where you could lift up, and it was only big enough for like the tip of a pen. So I think it was meant for a pen to be used. I think, which makes sense because you're going to be using the pen or pencil, I guess, to write down the names in the grid. Just so incredibly relatable for old ass people like me. And I feel like George should have made a little bit of a bigger deal that he was number 7. We all know George loves 7. Kramer enters with folding chairs. He says he wants to keep them at Jerry's place for his New Year's Eve party. Kramer, you're going to leave these here for 8 months? No, for my New Year's Eve party in 1999 for the Millennium, apparently. You want to keep these here for 2.5 years? Well, you're not going to see them, he insists, due to the case of party poppers he's going to put in front of them. George has unfolded and sat in one of the chairs, and he tells Jerry that he got a call from the Mets front office guys, and they want to have lunch. Oh, what for? I'm part of a winning ball club. They probably want to pick my brain. No, really, why do you think they want to meet with you? Jerry asks. George admits, I have no idea. Elaine comes in hot. She's like, I've had it with those Mayans. She says this while unfolding a chair. Jerry doesn't mind the Mayans. She tells them about her experience at Putumayo, and Kramer enters during her story, says, oh, I know a great place for huaraches. No, she says, not Putumayo. No, Cinco de Mayo, recommended by Marcelino, who's 164th Mayan. George says, I think I'm starting to get nervous about this lunch. Elaine asks what he had. He's about to explain to her, but then Kramer brings in a huge bunch of balloons and ties them to Elaine's chair. Kramer, these balloons aren't going to keep until New Year's. No, they're not for New Year's. They're my everyday balloons. I love that Kramer has everyday balloons. My take, we have all 4 together. So fun. It's always the best time. Elaine's part is small here, but we do need to hear about Cinco de Mayo from Kramer. Everyone using the folding chairs, it's so dumb, but it's so funny. It's just an example of a bit that doesn't need to be there, but it adds all this flavor because it is there. It's so funny. Bravo to Jennifer Crittenden for putting that in there if she did. I don't know if she did. Could have been a directing choice. We get a slight Benestanza moment. I like how she says, oh, what'd you have? Like he's about to poop his pants or something. All right, next we're in Monks. The Mets guys are there with George. They're looking for someone to head up scouting, and they think that George might be the guy. Are you interested? I'm still here, George says. But they can't hire him while he's still under contract with the Yankees. So they kind of go back and forth about how they're not saying this explicitly, but that he needs to lose his job in order to work for them. And along with not saying that, they're also not paying for George's lunch. Next, we're in Valerie's apartment. We see Valerie at her phone when Jerry arrives for their date. He apologizes for being late. There's a bunch of chairs and balloons in my apartment, but she's really annoyed about it. You can tell. He says, how about I make it up to you? Dinner. Someplace nice this time, she says. Yeah, I'm sorry about that Mongolian barbecue last night. I heard good things. I don't know, she says. Got a 2 in Zagat's. She exits to the back. Jerry goes to check his messages again because, wait, wasn't he just at home? I don't get that. He says maybe a nicer girl called. He presses the speed dial and he gets a woman named Jane. What number did you dial? 7? But then he looks down and sees that now he's number 9. Next, we're at Putumayo. Elaine comes to the store window. She bangs on it to get the saleswoman's attention. She tells her to look at her shoes. You see these? Cinco de Mayo. Sales commission. Bye-bye-o. It's a short scene, but pretty funny. JLD gets to really make a meal out of it. I like that little smug, satisfied look at the end with her little tongue in her cheek. She's like, yeah, I did. I showed you, lady. I mean, she made a special trip to rub it into this lady's face. Petty and vengeful Elaine. You gotta love her. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry and Kramer are at the table and George comes in singing the Mets theme song. Apparently it's Meet the Mets. So how was the meeting? There was no meeting, but it was quite a meeting. So he tells them about the whole deal. He needs to get fired from the Yankees to work for the Mets. Well, Jerry says, that's what you do. That should be no problem. Yeah, George doesn't doubt that, but he really wants to leave his mark this time. I want people saying, now that guy got canned. So a final blaze of incompetence. Kramer asks if people will still be using napkins in the year 2000, or is this mouth vacuum thing really going to happen? The guys don't even know what to say, so they move on. So George, I had a so-so date with Valerie, and he tells him how he moved down 2 spots in the speed dial. What, she's ranking you? Yes, he says the speed dial is like a relationship barometer. What is a barometer? And Kramer chimes in, it's pronounced thermometer. Jerry and George just pause in his idiocy. Kramer tells them how, in the year 2000, everyone will be on speed dial. You just have to think in order to call someone. Hey, hang on, I'm getting someone. It's Newman. And they do this little bit about Jerry not wanting to talk to him, whatever. Next, we're in Valerie's apartment. Jerry has wined and dined her, a fancy dinner, a play, flowers, a handsome cab ride. Jerry also reminds her about the Barnes & Noble gift certificate. And he says, I'm just trying to make a good impression. Then she goes to put the flowers in water, and Jerry rushes over to the phone, and he's number 1. Seinfeld, you magnificent bastard. All right, next we're at Yankee Stadium. George is starting this mission to get fired. He enters a meeting wearing Babe Ruth's historic uniform, and he's got a bag of very messy strawberries. Everyone in the meeting is shocked and horrified by the fact that he is wiping his strawberry sauce hands onto this historic uniform. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer is planning away. Will people be able to breathe underwater in the year 2000? Some of us, Jerry says. I don't want to exclude anybody. Elaine enters in an entire Mexican outfit. Jerry says, hola. And she says, shove it. Apparently, she got all this junk from Cinco de Mayo to show Putumayo how much business they were losing. She's been outside Putumayo dancing and strutting for 2 days. Well, no wonder we're getting so much rain. Kramer tells Elaine about his Millennium party and to save the date. And she says, oh, well, I just got this invitation for Newman's Millennium party. She hands it over to Kramer to read. Celebrate the new millennium with Newmanium. Newman. My take, wow, we see Elaine's pettiness really runs deep. I love the shove it back to Jerry. This is really to move Kramer's plot along. She shows him Newman's invite, and that's pretty much the purpose of all of this, to get these stories just moving along. I was trying to think if I have a store like Putumayo in my life, and I feel like I do, and it still affects me to this day. Okay, so there was this mall in Michigan, in Troy, Michigan, called Somerset. And it wasn't a mall, you guys. It was a collection. It was called the Somerset Collection. And for so long, it was just this one mall, not too big, but it had all like the high-end stores, like Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, not like a JCPenney or, that kind of podunk shit. So anyway, when I was in high school, they built this other section of this mall across this divided road. And like there was a bridge going across to the two sections. There was the south section, which was the fancier side. And then the north section, Somerset North. Now that had your more accessible stores like your Gaps, your Pottery Barns. But anyway, when Lululemon first arrived and they were starting to pop up in malls, Lululemon was on the fancy side. It was in the same building as the Cartier and the Armani and all those stores. And I kept hearing about it. It was like, oh my gosh, it's such a cool store if you like yoga. And I was super into yoga at the time. And I kind of had a Gladys Mayo experience. I remember going in there for the first time. No one was friendly. In fact, I remember trying to make some small talk, being like, oh yeah, I really love yoga. I mean, I don't really wear this kind of stuff, but I was interested, like, what's the advantage? Like, I was just trying to get to know about their products. And these people could not have like been less interested in selling me anything, which is why to this day, I really don't shop at Lululemon. My husband loves it. The men's stuff, he is all about it. But I just refuse. I don't know. On principle, I have such a terrible taste in my mouth from that first experience. It was that bad. And I'm like, I am an Athleta girl all the way. Athleta, Fabletics, but not Lululemon. Thanks to that first experience at Somerset Collection. All right, next we're in Jerry's car. A woman sits in the passenger seat. He says, hello, Valerie. But she turns and he says, you're not Valerie. No, I'm her stepmother. Drive. So basically, she threatens Jerry to stay away from that phone because she's worked very hard to make it to the top of that speed dial, and she's not going to lose it to the likes of you. The actress in this scene is Luann Gideon. She plays Mrs. Hamilton. Now, she's appeared in dozens of TV shows, including Malcolm in the Middle, Third Rock from the Sun. She was a series regular on the Nickelodeon show The Secret World of Alex Mack. She also played Mrs. Belding in an episode of Saved by the Bell. That made me very excited. Fun fact, she was very close friends with Tim Wadley, Bryan Cranston. He, in fact, presided over her wedding to Walt Borchers, a Hollywood composer. We unfortunately lost Luann at the early age of 58 from breast cancer. And I think she's perfect as Mrs. Hamilton. She's got that dramatic flair, but it's like got that perfect sprinkling of comedy at the same time. Just the absolute perfect tone for what this character needed. I don't actually love this setup per se, but Luann Gideon is a master at bringing this character to life. Another fun fact is that she's actually a year younger than Jerry Seinfeld, and yet supposed to be like the Anne Bancroft to his Dustin Hoffman, a la The Graduate, whatever. It's stupid, but isn't that just gross? All right, next we're in Yankee Stadium. Steinbrenner has called George into his office, and George thinks, of course, he's getting fired. He tells him he's already packed up my desk, sir. But then a twist. Steinbrenner actually thinks it was very refreshing of him to do that with Babe Ruth's uniform. We've got to let go of the past. And he stands up to reveal he's wearing Lou Gehrig's pants. So George is not getting fired. All right, next we're in Valerie's apartment. Jerry and Valerie are sitting on the couch watching a movie. He tells her how he noticed he's on her speed dial. You deserve it, she says. He says, I can't help but wonder if, I don't know, maybe someone deserves it more, or someone you've known more than a week. And she knows exactly what this is about. My stepmother got to you, didn't she? I can't believe she did this again. That's it. She's off the speed dial completely. Valerie gets up and grabs the phone. Yikes, Jerry says. Next, we're in Newman's apartment. Kramer is there, upset with Newman about his invitation. You just got it? Damn, the mail is slow. That's a great line. Kramer tells him he's going to have to cancel, but Newman refuses, claims that he's been planning the party way longer than him since 1978, which I think is a wonderful year. I think the world just got a little brighter around the end of September in 78. Anyway, Newman booked the revolving restaurant overlooking Times Square, and he also booked Christopher Cross. Kramer counters with equally impressive plans of folding chairs and quite a bit of ice. What kind? Cubed. Oh, that's good stuff. Fine. They decide to combine their parties under one condition for Newman. No Jerry. Well, Kramer can't do that. He says, nope. For Newman, the new millennium must be Jerry-free. Next, we're in a cab. Jerry and George are in the back seat. Jerry can't believe that they didn't fire George, and George is so disappointed in himself. I can't believe I failed at failing. Jerry pumps him back up. You do everything wrong. I have no faith in you. You suck. And it works. George is like, I know. Next, we're in Cinco de Mayo. Elaine is trying to tell the woman at the cash register that she's in fashion and that together they could put Putumayo out of business. So this shop could be numero uno de Mayo. But all of a sudden, that same rude woman from Putumayo comes out. Do you need help with something? Elaine is confused. What are you doing here? Well, she reveals that she owns this store. No, you don't. You own Putumayo, unless you own both stores. Oop. Yep, she's Gladys Mayo. Elaine is so embarrassed and annoyed. Oh, this really sticks in my craw, and she leaves. My take, the embarrassment is palpable. Stupid Gladys Mayo owning both stores, getting all that money from Elaine that she spent at Cinco de Mayo. And she's so cool about it too. I think that's what makes it worse for Elaine. Gladys couldn't care less about her. JLD's double take is funny. It's a bit farcical, like when she says, unless you own both stores, and she kind of looks at her like, huh? I don't mind it. It's done really well. Sticks in my craw is great. I love that line. Next, we're at Mrs. Hamilton's apartment. First of all, I have to mention what a sorry ass set this is. They're like, paint one wall kind of yellow and then an ugly couch. That's it. Anyway, she's pouring some wine for Jerry. He thinks that they've patched things up and that Valerie will be joining them, but she isn't there yet. Oh, I'm sure she'll be along. She gets awfully close to Jerry, saying how attractive and strong and comedic he is. And Jerry's really nervous. She says, why don't we be naughty and I put you on my speed dial? Oh, I'm not sure about that, he says. What about Valerie? I won't tell if you don't. Jerry runs out. Right, next we're in Kramer's bed. We see him tossing and turning, mumbling about Newman, year 2000, and he bolts up, Newmanium! He looks over and sees a framed photo of himself and Jerry on his nightstand, celebrating a past New Year's together, and he hugs it to his chest and flops down in such turmoil. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. He's watching the Yankee game. We hear the announcers talk about a naked man streaking across the field. Oh my God, George, Jerry says. Well, apparently he's not actually naked. He's wearing a flesh-toned bodysuit. Kramer enters. Look, Kramer, it's George. Jerry can't believe it. Yeah, I know. He turns off the TV. He's very serious. He tells Jerry about the whole Newman condition, and Jerry's like, all right, it's really not a problem for him. Kramer says, no, he won't stand for it. He's ashamed that he even thought of not inviting him. Elaine enters, and Kramer says that she can't go to Newman's party, and she's like, all right, you gotta spend New Year's Eve 1999 with them. Fine. Oh, come on. All right, she says, yes. Kramer's excited. He's going to go tell Newman he doesn't need him. He goes to leave, but then Elaine stops him and asks if he still has his pricing gun. Yeah. She wonders if he could help her put Putumayo out of business. Can do, he says. Jerry asks what she's going to do with the pricing gun. Oh, that store is about to have the sale of the century. Nothing over 99 cents. Elaine exits. Still a ripoff, Jerry says. Then Jerry gets a call from Valerie. She's upset about finding his number on her stepmom's speed dial. We get this three-way call between Jerry, Valerie, and the stepmother. It's a really fun back and forth between clicks of the call waiting. And we end with Valerie thinking that she won, but the stepmother will just hide Jerry's number in one of the emergency buttons. Then at the end of that, another beep comes in, and it's George calling in his bodysuit. I can't get fired. These guys walk by the payphone cheering for Bodysuit Man, and people start approaching him and crowding him. My take, it's a fun scene. We're moving along the story here with Elaine's plan with Kramer. I love an Elaine and Kramer storyline. What is the combined name? I don't know. Benamer, Cosmain, whatever. A scheme between Elaine and Kramer is always delicious. I do like how JLD says that line, nothing over 99 cents. Devious Elaine is very enjoyable. All right, next we're at Putumayo. We see Elaine peek in and she sees that Gladys is there. So she sends in Kramer. He barrels in, goes right to the counter and introduces himself as H.E. Pennypacker. He's a wealthy American industrialist looking to open a silver mine in Peru. For that reason, he tells Gladys he'd like to go a little native, feel of their condiments, their unmentionables, the real nitty gritty. Kramer spots some chips and salsa on the counter, and then he starts shoving chips into his mouth. She offers to show him around, but he's like, I can just look around. Machu Picchu. Are these free? He asks about the chips. Yeah, Gladys says. Did Kramer not eat in a few months or something? He's just stuffing these chips into his mouth. He grabs a handful of clothes and coughs, of course, because he's choking. And he makes his way into the fitting room. Some of those are women's clothes. Oh, not a problem, he says. And then he's behind the curtain when we hear the price gun clicking away, but then he drops it, steps on it, and breaks it. All right, next we're at Yankee Stadium. George has resorted to driving around the parking lot with the trophy tied to the back bumper, dragging it behind. He has a megaphone, bad-mouthing all the front office staff, calling them morons and that they all stink. All right, next we're at Putumayo. We see Val and Mrs. Hamilton shopping together. Elaine enters and tries not to be seen. She sneaks by Gladys into the fitting room where Kramer's just farting around. She scares the crap out of him. He says, "Occupado." She asks him, "What's taking you so long?" He says that the price gun broke, so he had to move to plan B. Plan B? There is no plan B. He tells her he's been removing all the desiccants from the clothing. What? He tells her how they absorb moisture, and these clothes won't last 5 years without them. That's not going to do anything. Patience. Ugh, Elaine is so pissed. You screwed me again, pennypacker. And she exits. Gladys offers Valerie and the stepmother some chips, and Kramer enters from the fitting room and definitely wants more chips. We see a packet of desiccants fall into the salsa, and he flings the clothes onto the counter, says he's changed his mind. He's going to build a roller coaster instead, and he leaves. And we see a shot of the salsa all bubbling up. And then Mrs. Hamilton walks up and starts eating some chips and salsa. My take, I think this is my favorite scene. It's so funny with JLD and Michael Richards. So endearing how Kramer is so, he's very earnest about thinking this plan B was so solid. He's like, oh yeah, I'll just do this. It's the same. And to this day, I can't look at a pack of desiccants without thinking of Kramer and this scene. It actually did teach me what they were for. And it's kind of brilliant too, because we all know how large they print the "do not eat" on there, which apparently they just say that because, it's not food, but they are non-toxic. I did read that. I do wish we got a little bit more of this partnership between Elaine and Kramer for this episode. It's just so funny. All right, next we're at Yankee Stadium. Steinbrenner has called George in. He's so pissed. He's about to fire George when Wilhelm comes in and takes all the blame. He says that he put George up to that stunt and he's sick of Steinbrenner's macho head games. And George is like, no, it was all me. Well, Steinbrenner believes Wilhelm and fires him and exits to scalp tickets. After he's gone, George is shocked, and Wilhelm told him that he wanted to get fired. He got the Mets job that George was going for. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer is telling Jerry, I don't know why Elaine is so upset. Without desiccants, those clothes will be noticeably musty in 5 years. Jerry says she never sees the big picture. Newman comes to the door. They exchange their mean hellos. Asks Kramer what he said to Elaine. I just got her cancellation in the mail. Oh, I guess she found a better place to go. Well, it's her loss. She's going to miss the party of a lifetime. Kramer gives him a hard time and rubs it in that he may miss out on a New Year's Eve kiss from Elaine because he's caught between the moon and New York City, which is a Christopher Cross song. Fine, Newman gives in. You can come back to my party. Jerry, too. Newman confirms, well, you don't want to do your act or anything. He says, no. Fine, I'll take a little Jerry for a lot of Elaine. Famous Newman line. They shake on it to the Newmanium, to the Cremanium. They both go to exit and Kramer leaves, but Jerry stops Newman and points out that he booked his party for the Millennium New Year. Newman doesn't understand. Well, since there was no year zero, the Millennium doesn't start until 2001, which would make your party 1 year late, and thus quite lame. Newman lets that sink in, and he's pissed, and he makes a noise that really doesn't sound human and exits. There's a tag to the episode. Val is with her stepmother at her place, and her stepmother doesn't feel well. She feels all dried up inside. Valerie goes to call for help and presses the poison control button, but gets Jerry. She's so pissed, but Jerry is like, wow, that's higher than number 1. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. A night out with friends, tacos, margaritas, what could be better? You pick a fun outfit, maybe you bought something new, the tags are cut off and you're walking by the dried chili peppers like you're on the runways of Paris. But nothing ruins a night out at your favorite Mexican restaurant more than spilled salsa staining your clothes. That's why you need the driest salsa on the market, Silica Salsa by Machu Picchu. This salsa has a special ingredient that absorbs all the moisture that plagues regular salsa, making it tasty and safe from dripping all over the place. Silica salsa was invented by accident over 25 years ago by a humble shop owner in New York City. When a wealthy industrialist visited her shop, Gladys Mayo believes he anointed her with the prosperity incantation without her knowing, because from that day forward, she knew the secret ingredient needed to reinvent the #1 condiment in America. Find Silica Salsa by Machu Picchu in any major grocery chain today. For a limited time, you will receive 46 pairs of huaraches. That's right, 46! Silica Salsa by Machu Picchu. Say bye-bye-o to your dripping taco. And we're back. There were a couple of deleted scenes on the DVD. Elaine, there's a scene where Elaine walks into Putumayo with all of those Mexican clothes on, trying to stick it to her. And Gladys literally doesn't remember her. She's like, "Do I know you?" "You should," Elaine says, "but you don't." And that hurts. And then she walks out and fucks up the door again. It's kind of funny. Now, this was definitely supposed to occur before she gets to Jerry's apartment to tell him, shove it. But you can tell, like, very carefully in the scene, she doesn't say that she got it at Cinco de Mayo. She just says, "I got this from another store," like whatever. But it's fine. Another great performance by Gladys Mayo. She's just like, "Should I know who you are?" Another deleted scene. So it's when she's at Jerry's place in all her Mexican clothes, and she sees a photo of herself in the paper in the fashion around town section. "Oh, a pretty senorita," it says. "Purchased at Putumayo." Apparently it says that in the caption. And she's like, "No, I didn't buy this there. Oh, now it's getting all this press." Jerry then points to a picture below her. "Well, she's pretty cute." "Oh, that's an obituary." Oops. Kind of funny. It gives Elaine more stuff, but don't think it was necessary. All right, now it's time to open Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor, and every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. Here are his overall thoughts this week. He says, coming off last week's wealth of comedy and great plot lines, we're back to a fairly mediocre episode this week. There is a lot of silliness, and Elaine's story has more potential than is executed. I do love that she enlists Kramer in her retaliation, though. George gets my favorite plot here as he tries to get himself fired from the Yankees so that he can go to the Mets. Yeah, I'm with you. It's a okay episode, but for me, there's just a lot of memorable moments and like kind of quotable lines for me. I don't know. We quote a lot of the lines in this episode around our house. I do really like it, but I definitely agree with you, Greg. It's not like it's the best episode. Next in Greg's sack are his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, while Elaine's story is fairly weak, I do find some moments funny. I like when she's fully dressed in Mayan gear and she says she's been strutting and dancing in front of Putumayo, and Jerry says, "No wonder we're getting so much rain." It's a Jerry line, but it made me laugh. Yeah, no, it's funny. It's kind of, he knows she's so annoyed, and what is Jerry going to do except just kind of dig his nails in a little bit more. Next, Greg says, Elaine's funniest line is when she says, "This really sticks in my craw," when she realizes the woman owns both Mayan stores. It's not even the best line altogether, but she gets so little in all of this that I'll take whatever. No, I agree. I like the way she says it. I think it's in the delivery because, yeah, the line itself isn't so funny, but what can she do except admit, this is really fucking annoying. And she couldn't say that. Maybe in Veep, but not in Seinfeld. All right, next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. He says the ideas overall in this episode, I suppose, were fine in theory. I just think they could have been executed so much better. Elaine needed more to have happen to warrant spending this much time on revenge against the rude store owner. I needed this battle to be worth fighting. Jerry's story is just ridiculous altogether, and Kramer and Newman's dueling party idea just had way more potential than we saw. George had the funniest stuff here, and it would have been better to incorporate someone else in his ploys to get fired. The more I think of it, I just don't like this episode. Is that funny? When you start picking it apart, you're like, ew, this episode sucks. Yeah, I don't think it sucks, but I definitely agree with you. Everything had good potential, but I think everything went awry in certain ways, in different ways per storyline. But yeah, I think you put it really well, Greg. Why is Elaine so invested in getting this revenge? Just because of that one rude encounter? I mean, you live in New York. Don't you get a rude encounter all the time? I mean, sorry if I'm offending any New Yorkers, Greg, you included, but I think that's part of the city's charm. Next are Greg's extra thoughts. He says, who is going to change their speed dial daily? Come on, Lauren Graham. Also, that stepmother creeps me out. What's funny, though, is this reminds me of when MySpace had a top 8, which would make way more sense to change than programming in a friggin' phone number over and over. Lauren Graham deserved a better story. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go into more why Jerry's story just doesn't do it for me. And yeah, you have a great actress like Lauren Graham. And I'm going to say even Luann, who plays Mrs. Hamilton, really great actress. But I just don't think her character was necessary. But like I said, I'm going to get more into that in a little bit. Next, Greg says, also, who's going to eat out of a communal bowl of salsa in a clothing store? I wouldn't do this at a grocery store. And what an opportune time for someone to mention double dipping, but yet it's wasted. Oh, yeah, for sure. See, maybe this is where George should have come in. And then maybe they could have brought that Tommy guy back and caught George double dipping in the salsa. Oh, totally missed opportunity. And last, Greg says, a line that always bothers me is when Jerry says to Newman that if his party is in January 2000 and not January 2001, it would be a year late and lame. In that instance, it would be a year early. Every time I see this one, I'm confused as to how this wasn't caught. Man, does this episode suck. Ooh, you've gone way off the cliff of it sucking now. I love it. That was brought up in the goofs section of the IMDb page. Someone's like, wait a second. If you're talking about the year 2001, like, yeah, they said the same thing you did, Greg. It does confuse me as well. It was too complex to include in this episode. Bottom line, it is very confusing and it's not that big of a burn. I feel like, I don't know, it just was unnecessary. And I think they thought it was more clever than it actually was. Thank you so much, Greg, for your thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, my favorite Elaine moments. I really like that first scene. I love how huffy she is. You just lost a customer. And then the failed exit. It's so good. And then a close second, I think, would be, it's so stupid, but the sales commission, bye-bye-o. And more so the face she makes after that. How pleased she is with herself. She just really thinks she got Gladys. And my final notes, this story for Elaine, now I'm rethinking it because of how much Greg hated it. I said it's pretty fun. I do love a vengeful, scheming Elaine, but I agree with Greg here. I don't believe it's really earned. Why is she so fixated? But her and Kramer together, it's great. But yeah, a very middle of the road plot line for me. JLD gets some fun moments of comedy, which I will take, especially if the plot is weak. Like the plot itself is pretty weak. So if she gets to be goofy and do some stupid stuff, I'll take that. And I think just in general, Elaine has issues with saleswomen. The false reflecting woman, at Barney's, the woman working in the store where her twin mannequin was. Listen, Natasha, Elaine is like always ready to pop off with these ladies. I think it's an okay episode. It's not great. It's not terrible. I would have swapped out the dumb stepmother graduate parody stuff with Jerry for more Elaine stuff, obviously. I'm not sure if the more stuff with Elaine would be Putumayo stuff, since that story just can't stretch too far. But maybe she tries to help George get fired or something. I don't know. But just more Elaine and more George together, that would solve every bad episode. Jerry's story is fun, but it gets just too complicated with the stepmother stuff. If they just stuck to the speed dial grid, I think that was funny. Again, not fantastic, but funny enough where they could have splintered off into some other things, but the stepmother thing, ugh. And I think it's because, well, it sticks in my craw that the older lady is actually a year younger than Jerry. It just fucking bugs me. I'm like, get off your fucking high horse, Jerry Seinfeld. This woman, if you're going to do that storyline, don't pick a woman that's actually your age, because it's like, don't you just see how gross that is? Ugh. Overall, meh episode. Lots of quotable phrases, at least in my house, from this episode. But yeah, it's not on my hit list for sure. And I think that's all I can say about the Millennium. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.